What's up, nerds? Welcome to episode 27 of The Bandwagon Fan. This is the show where we talk about all things pop culture. I'm Josh.
I'm AJ.
And I'm Jacob.
And we have Jakob Free back with us, people. So, Jacob, you are back to help us crack open Moon Knight from Disney Plus.
Yeah, man.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Disney, Daddy Warbucks Disney, aka the mouse in the house. They're throwing a lot of money around. Sometimes I'm thinking, when is this money gonna end? When is the money train gonna end? Right? I cannot wait for in 5 years another super obscure comic. I mean, isn't Squirrel Girl? Is that a Marvel IP or is that a?
Yeah, that's Marvel.
Yeah.
That's Marvel. Okay, there is. I don't know if it's a petition or rumors that they're making a Squirrel Girl TV show, which on one hand, I'm kind of just like, oh, come on. Like, what is this? Like, where are we getting these heroes from? But if they do it as a comedy, I think it actually could be pretty funny. So,
yeah, well, I think the interesting, we used to have this email signature when I worked at Marvel. I'm sure it's still there.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it was like this, like this disclaimer about what we owned. I guess they thought, like anything could be stolen from an email or something. But,
oh, wow.
But it said, Marvel is the copyright owner or something like that of 5,000 plus fictional characters.
What?
And so I think, especially from Disney's perspective, the idea is that it's not about superheroes. It's about each one of these things, no matter how ridiculous it could be. To Stiltman, all the way over to Stiltman, who's a real character, can be a movie, an animation, a video game, or whatever, a lunchbox, and all that stuff. And so I do think, Squirrel Girl probably won't even be obscure by the time that comes out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They'll be like 3 layers lower than that, and we'll all be like, oh my God.
Yeah, they hit pause on it, I think, on Squirrel Girl.
Did they?
Oh, yeah.
It was rumored that the AT&T girl was going to be Squirrel Girl. Yeah.
Well, I think at its core, like the biggest problem that they're having is that they're becoming Galactus, and I'm so happy that's a phrase I could use in the most apt way possible, because it's like there's just so much to consume, and it's just like this and this and this, and I think at some point Disney needs to sit down and they say, like, how do we separate these IPs? Like, I think it's okay to make a Moon Knight show or a Squirrel Girl show that doesn't have to necessarily connect to the MCU. You know what I mean? Because I think that gives it, like in comparison to DC, for example, right? Like 3 of my favorite shows right now DC is making is Young Justice, the Harley Quinn show, and it's not out yet, but oh shoot, I can't remember the other name of the show. But DC is doing like really interesting things with their TV shows and their other IPs, and they're not connected to this universe. And I think that's good. I think it's a good thing, because it they're just different takes of the same things, and it's refreshing. Whereas like Disney's all like, how does this fit in the MCU? If it doesn't fit in the MCU, you can't use it.
It's all one thing.
Yeah. It's all one thing.
I agree completely. It should only ever be a tool that enhances what you're watching, right? It shouldn't be like an albatross that hangs around the neck of the filmmakers or whomever. And sometimes nowadays, I really do feel the sort of need to have watched stuff when I go to see another thing. I don't like feeling that way,
I don't either. I really don't.
Fresh, and I think there's a way to do that. There's more work. Like I just saw the new Top Gun movie the other day.
Oh, I can't wait to watch it. Yeah,
I read your review of that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
No, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But I also kept thinking, like, if I were 12 years old right now, which is probably the age when I saw the original Top Gun on VHS or something, would this movie make sense to me? And the answer was like, absolutely. Like there wasn't a moment where I was like, oh shit, I wish I had seen the original Top Gun. And I think that requires, a lot of work up front to make sure that this thing stands on its own. And I think sometimes with the Disney properties now, I'm thinking to myself, even as a nerd, like what did Thor do last movie?
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
it's too much. Like background knowledge should enhance your viewing pleasure. It shouldn't be a requirement to view it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I look at someone like my dad who loves movies, but he would never try to take in the MCU because it's like, oh well, okay, that's Ant-Man. He was in the okay, hold on, let me back up. So before Ant-Man, there was the Stark. Okay, you don't know who the Starks are? Okay, there like is so much to like have to explain to somebody who like is coming in. One of the things I was kind of hoping that they would do now that they're introducing like a multiverse is that I thought it would be really cool if like they did like a show like Moon Knight and each season was maybe based off like a different comic run or something. And you could kind of just pull from whatever run does well in the future if you want to incorporate it into the MCU. Marvel, Disney, I'm for hire. Like, let me know, Kevin Feige, if you're there, like I can help fix this. Like I can.
I think that's a great point, and it's very intuitive. I feel the same exact way, and you know, especially since you know I have so many favorite runs of this or that character, and I'm thinking in no other medium that gets adapted to another medium have the pieces already been in play for the people doing the adapting, right? So like we talked about this a little bit, and I'm sure we'll get into it here, but like the Moon Knight series that gets you know used a lot for this new series, the new Disney Plus series, is so self-contained and so episodic and so perfect for television that it kind of boggles my mind that that's not where they went with this.
That's not the direction that they went.
Yeah, and I think another great example, and it remains to be seen whether the quality is there or not. You know, I'm not going to prejudge things, but this new Thor movie, from what I've gathered in the trailers, looks like it's pulling on 3 completely unrelated major storylines and then just like smushing them into
fusing them together.
And I'm thinking, no, each one of those could have been a 2-hour, you know, epic of its own. And now they're like, no, you got to fit as much as we possibly can in there. Well, I just don't understand.
Yeah. Well, before we jump in, like, I do want to like comment that I feel like it's a waste to throw in Christian Bale's character. That I think I can't remember his name. I know he's a god killer or something like that. Gore. Yeah. And I think that's a really cool concept. And like something that Marvel struggles with is that they're like, hey, here's a cool villain. He's dead. Right. Don't worry. We won't reference him again. He won't ever come back. Like, don't worry about where he went. And like, you don't feel any attachment to any of the problems that a lot of the heroes have because their threats are always new, but we've seen them conquer what seems like insurmountable odds, right? And 100%. That's
I think that another great point. Like, I thought this from the very beginning. You can't in a comic book movies. You can't be killing off all of the classic villains in the first movie they show up in. Like Ultron is gone now.
Yeah, he's gone.
How many times has Ultron come back in the comic books to mess with the Avengers over like the last 50 years?
Yeah,
and now that's just off the table. Same thing with Michael B. Jordan's character in Black Panther.
Killmonger. So crazy. Yeah.
Arguably like one of the best.
It's such a waste. Such a waste. Or even someone like Thanos. It's like he's a good villain, and yes, he was part of the MCU for a while, but we don't really see him we only see him for 2 movies and he's gone. So So Jacob, help us out here. So like, I don't know that much about Moon Knight other than this, right? And I felt like, watching the whole series and then this first episode specifically, I remember thinking to myself, there's a lot of cool stuff that someone at Disney was like, this has to be made for kids. And so you can see that like there was like all these like cool things that I'm like, oh, that would have been okay. No, they decided not to do that. Okay, that's fine. So help us understand like who is Moon Knight? What is his like standing in the MCU in the Marvel comic universe? Sure. And like how what is he about? Because I don't really know other than what I've had.
Yeah, I think to start at a high level, I think your point about the walking the line between what's all ages friendly and what is true to the character is one of the main tensions or pain points, I think, with the Moon Knight TV show. And because Moon Knight, much like Daredevil or the Punisher, which is probably the premier example, has never ever been all ages friendly. One of Moon Knight's seminal moments in the 21st century was when he used his version of the Batarang, whatever they're called, Moon Knight orangs or whatever, to tear off one of his arch nemesis' whole face.
Oh goodness!
Yeah, to remove it completely, and it's gruesome. And so you're not gonna ever see that on Disney Plus. It's just not possible. There was a time when the Marvel properties were on Netflix where that kind of level
that would have been that would have been
possible. If you've seen any of those Daredevil seasons, there's some really
they're really good.
It gets visceral
stuff. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the main tensions here. But as a character, Moon Knight emerges in mid 70s, and as part of like a wider array of grittier characters, some of the exploitation characters, the street level characters. Punisher also is from that era, if I'm not mistaken. Where it's a little bit more, I don't want to say adult oriented, because ultimately these are comic books that are getting read by younger people, but and from the get-go, it's just not something that easily fits into the Peter Parker Fantastic Four mold, right? Which is like, pop
family
art,
friendly
adventure. Peter Parker's main concerns are like, rent and, taking care of Aunt May and like, his boss and stuff like that. Moon Knight is not concerned with that. Okay. He's not. And it originally, and I think the show, and I've only seen the pilot, so, it might dive into different areas, but originally Mark Spector is the central, personality. And, obviously the show, at least in the pilot, situates Stephen Grant as the anchor character to jut away from. But so the basics are sort of similar. Originally, Mark Spector is a mercenary. He gets caught up in some bloodbath in Egypt and dies at the statue of Kanchu, and then is sort of resurrected as it's Kanchu's avatar. And for the last so 75 gets us what 50 years. He's had a bunch of different transformations and reinterpretations. At one point he wasn't crazy. It was sometimes called schizophrenia, sometimes dissociative identity disorder. There have been supernatural takes. There have been less supernatural takes. There's, in my favorite Moon Knight stories, there's a very nice ambiguity about whether Kanchu is even real. Which I think playing with is really
that's
great.
Cool. That's really good.
A lot of interesting storytelling potential there. And for me, certainly in the 21st century, I think once you get away from the seminal Sienkiewicz Moon Knight back in the day, which is Bill Sienkiewicz is such a wonderful artist, and I think he's been identified as one of the architects of Moon Knight's look and tone. In the modern day, which we talked briefly about last time I was on the show, the Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey 6-issue miniseries, for lack of a better term, has become the defining story that many news stories have then branched off on. You had the Greg Smallwood, Jeff Lemire story that kind of picked up a lot of those threads, and I think wound their way into the show as well. And then I'm not familiar with what's going on right now. I think Josh, you probably read the current Moon Knight stuff. Have you read that?
Yeah, I've been reading that.
Yeah, and
so the Jed McKay, I've been reading that.
There's a lot of different. Yeah, there's a lot of different takes. We talked about the time when Moon Knight was Captain America, Wolverine, and Spider-Man instead of Mark Spector, Jake Lockley, and Stephen Grant.
Yes.
But then they've gone back to those personalities a bunch, and classically Stephen Grant is sort of a Bruce Wayne type, and Jake Lockley is a taxi cab driver.
Okay.
And Mark Spector again is sort of the anchor.
It's like
But they've changed that up so many times, and I think perhaps everyone has their preferred take. But for me, the Warren Ellis Shalvey series is the foundational text of the modern Moon Knight era, and that comes out of, if I recall correctly, the Secret Avengers, which now we're getting in the weeds a little bit, but that's the first time Warren Ellis, I believe, introduces Mr. Knight, and then Mr. Knight becomes a player in the Moon Knight branded series.
Yeah. Well, I think that like something that is very interesting, and what some of the themes that I can see here. I just finished watching the Wheel of Time. Not watching, reading. Excuse me. I read the entire series, and that's kind of like a theme in the book series of like this. The main character thinks he's going crazy because he is other people. He's lived other lives, and a lot of the book is centralizing around like him trying to find like which person he is, and that's a very interesting perspective. And then I also think of a different movie, Split. I don't know if you've watched Split before. I love that movie.
But it's been on my list. I like Bruce Willis' character in Unbreakable.
It's in that universe, and I think it's M. Night Shyamalan's best movie since The Sixth Sense, because James McAvoy does a tremendous job playing someone with DID. It is incredible, and I kind of felt that like that's some of the things that Disney should have pulled their inspiration from. When it came to the show a little bit, they should have pulled from like a very central concept in Split was like you feel bad for this person who thinks they're other people, and they're at war with themselves, and that's affecting other people around them. And like, and it's done in such a way where you're just like, wow, like it's also bringing light to DID, right? And kind of just how destructive it is. I think it's an interesting metaphor for that, but also realistically in the frame of in the frame of the movie, it's like a power. And so I feel like that's something that Disney could have done with this, and I don't know. I mean, like, I just kind of felt that I kind of felt that they were like, what's the most G-rated way we can make Punisher? And then they did that.
Yeah.
There it is.
I think you there's a couple different ways to play it. Like you said, I think one angle, and it's been done in the Moon Knight comics before, is this sort of powers as a curse Marvel storytelling technique, which is basically, sort of the X-Men style of things. Like this isn't necessarily a gift for a lot of people. They have to deal with their ability in a way like you and I might deal with like our own medical problems. That's an interesting angle, and I think you can do a lot of cool stories with that in mind. And then there's, like you said, this is an ability that gets exploited by the character, and I think Moon Knight actually can work in both ways if you do it effectively. In the Ellis 6-issue series, there is no tension between the three personalities. Each comic starts, it's a completely isolated story with its own setup and payoff, and it's just a different personality rolling in and out, and there's never any real tension between those characters or any inconvenience for Mark Spector. He kind of just slides between these,
bobbing in between. Yeah.
For utility's sake. Like he has to be Mr. Knight sometimes, so he is Mr. Knight. He has to be the sort of standard Moon Knight persona, and so he does that. And then there's the bone suit Moon Knight, which in that story is utilized to really amazing in a really amazing way. And so you could do it both ways. I think the issue with the show, as far as I can tell from the pilot is it's sort of played like like Fight Club almost. Like he wakes up in a weird place and he doesn't know how he got there, and he doesn't know what he's
I never thought about that. That's so true.
That's very that's so true. That's a good comparison.
That's a very good comparison.
a great touchstone, of course. I'm a huge Fight Club guy, but you have to deliver on, you have to continually deliver on that premise. And I think, and you've sort of hinted at this just now, it's going in a lot of different directions and trying to please a lot of different masters. And I think you get a diluted product from that. But yeah, DID is a great, it's a great storytelling device. You can do so much with it.
Yeah. So we start out with Stephen Grant. He, they definitely go with like a more comical approach with it. I feel he's like this kind of quirky, kind of a square dude. He's English. He calls himself a gift shopist. And then, he finds himself in the middle of who knows where. And then he comes face to face with Arthur Harrow, who I'm sure, Jacob, you know this. Arthur Harrow is a very like D-list Moonlight villain. I believe he's only in one issue. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so Arthur Harrow,
he's not a popular villain.
Yeah, and he was based off of David Koresh, the cult leader, real life cult leader, and he's got this weird cult. They want to bring Amit's justice and vengeance upon the world because Kanchu is too slow. He lets bad things happen, and Arthur Harrow and his followers want to take the approach of we stop evil before it happens, and then that brings Moon Knight and Steven and Mark into direct conflict with Harrow and what they're trying to accomplish. And so the show becomes like this race to stop what Harrow is trying to do. And then there's also like the layers of DID. And then we meet Mark's wife, Layla, who I don't believe Layla's a character. She's a combination of characters from the comics. Jacob, could you speak more to that? Because I wasn't too familiar. I couldn't think of like who she was supposed to be.
I wasn't familiar with her either. Like Moon Knight's had love interest in the past. I believe the big one is this woman named Marlene. But again, like not a huge like component in my mind of the mythology. And so I think like the Layla character, and I've only seen the first episode, but seems like a bit of a construction for the show's plot.
I was just going to say how, she does seem like she's a combination of different characters to kind of draw into the narrative of what Disney was trying to do with their interpretation of Moon Knight.
I also think that so some of the things that kind of happened in that first episode, and this is kind of the problems that we discussed earlier, is there are these cool moments for action because I think that there needed to be like that balance, like you said, almost like a Daredevil, almost like a Punisher type of thing where, it's showing us why this person is the hero or whatever that they are. And I really thought that cutting away from that was a really big undercut. I kind of felt that Disney made this decision to make the show PG, for example. And they were trying to figure out like, okay, what's the goriest, what's like the next direction that we can take without showing someone's bones being broken. But I kind of feel like if you have to go this far to ask that question, what is the point? What is the purpose of like what's the point? What's the point of showing us this character? You're showing us a defanged Moon Knight. From my take, and I think you said this before, that we're supposed to kind of equate him to like a more unhinged Batman. So to me, this guy has to be like a by any means necessary person. We spend so much time with Steven. It's just like, I don't know. It doesn't seem that interesting.
Yeah. You
who's this for?
My similar. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The audience question is key. And I think we have to remember at the end of the day, that it's not good or bad, but Marvel and Disney are trying to get the 4-quadrant hit all the time, and that will affect the tone and the mood of all of these movies, and they push it. I haven't seen Doctor Strange, but I've heard it's probably one of the gorier Marvel movies out there.
Yeah,
and more horror tinged, and Moon Knight certainly plays in that world. I think there's a couple of high level issues that I have, and again, this is not I don't want to just sit here for an hour and say how much we hate this thing or whatever. I do think I do think that there are issues from a storytelling or mechanical perspective that get in the way for a person like me who has certain feelings about Moon Knight. One is and Josh, you mentioned this already, but like the Peter Parker-fication of Stephen Grant, right? This sort of like down on his luck, loserish type nebbishy guy who can't get it. You can't get the dates right, and he has romance trouble, and he's calling his mom all the time. That's a stock Marvel character. It's been done to death, and while I find it interesting in the right context, I don't think works for Moon Knight at all. And we were just talking about this, but to me, the way I would do it, if anybody trusted me enough to do something like this, you have to open with Moon Knight, not Mark Spector, not Stephen Grant, not Jake Lockley, Moon Knight, the superhero or the vigilante, however you want to look at him, doing something Moon Knight-esque. And I think you start the show strong with that, and then you proceed from there. The fundamental issue I have with so much modern entertainment is the first episode of anything or the first issue of anything is like a pitch to the reader or the viewer.
Oh my goodness! Yes,
to
yes.
More.
It's the worst.
It's super frustrating. At the end of the pilot episode, we see Moon Knight in all his glory for what, 3 seconds?
For like 3, yeah, like if that.
Yeah,
This is an absolute, like, at the fundamental level, mistake for that character in particular. It would be like watching a Terminator movie and not showing the Terminator for the first hour. I think that's crazy. And that's modern television, though. Now, you know, the Moon Knight show, much like, you know, Ozark, which I like, or any modern streaming prestige television, are movies cut up into 8 episodes or 6 episodes.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's not how television used to be. And I think the Moon Knight specifically, and Spider-Man works this way too, would be a great episodic piece of television. Each week is a monster of the week style conflict that Moon Knight has to figure out how to achieve, you know, get the better of. And then across 6 or 8 episodes, there's some sort of overarching story that they can check in on. But you have to have that A plot, B plot kind of thing for Moon Knight to work, in my mind, because he doesn't have a great rogues gallery. It's not deep, as we've already said. The guy whose name I can't even remember, the fake David Koresh guy.
Yeah, Arthur Harrow.
He's not
Arthur Harrow, yeah.
Arthur Harrow. It's not interesting. And so you really have to push what's interesting about Moon Knight. And I think at a fundamental level, they haven't done that with this show. And so those are my main frustrations. And some of it's not Marvel's fault. It's just the nature of streaming television now. But yeah, I think it just doesn't pull me in the way Moon Knight really should, because I do think Moon Knight would appeal to a lot of people who don't read the book if they saw it done properly on TV.
There's like the tonal, like what we were promised. I don't know if you guys are aware of the comments Kevin Feige made before the show was released.
Yeah.
No.
Vaguely.
So he said like it was going to be very dark, very visceral. We're not holding back. That he was even shocked to see some of the things that were being filmed. And then we got
the splecks of blood.
Instead. Yeah. So for me, who I was really looking forward to seeing Moon Knight carve up somebody's forehead with his crescent moons, we didn't get that.
We didn't get that. We didn't get that at all. And I also think that kind of to what Jacob was saying earlier, that it's done in the service of those who don't know who Moon Knight is, right. Which I also think doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Let's not play games, right? Moon Knight is not a mainstream hero, and that's fine. You know, he's a little bit more, if you're deeper into the comic world, he's a little bit deeper in there, which is fine. But I kind of think that's like someone who's gonna watch it. Like, you know what? Okay, just future spoilers for a future episode. Watch the first episode of Obi-Wan, and that's the same feeling I had. That it's like, who is this for? Somebody who is gonna invest their time in this IP this deep. They got it. You don't have to go and you don't have to go back and tell us like you don't have to do any of that. Just jump. If you're gonna tell, like you said, this like A and B type story, then just tell the story. Just tell an interesting story. You don't have to like so many of these things. They do this tell and don't show. They're telling us. Yeah. And I kind of felt that like, okay, let's use Steven as a way to kind of introduce the audience into a lot of Egyptian mythology, right? Okay, fine. They don't do that either, which makes no sense. It's like you set up for so much, like, oh, you know, he's you know, part of his brain, I guess, is studying a bunch of Egyptian mythology and history and stuff like that. Something that, you know, you would want to see is like, okay, well, what does this mean to the character? Is there this moment where Mark Spector then is able to like recall things that Steven learned because Steven learned it? Like where's the connection? It all just seems there to just kind of be this like, you know, hunky dory guy. Oh, you know, shucks, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. It just it's uninteresting.
I absolutely agree, and I think bringing up Star Wars is a good touchstone there too, because something's changed about the way Star Wars works nowadays. I think in 1977, George Lucas, and the rest of the people in the production, nobody thought like, okay, when this character steps on the screen, we need to have, a couple lines of dialogue to get the full measure of their character. No, Han Solo just emerges like fully
Yeah.
formed
Yeah.
in that cantina scene, and you're like, oh my god, I understand this guy completely. He's a cowboy, he's brash, he's Harrison Ford. That communicates something to the viewer. But now, when you watch a lot of modern Star Wars, it's like we're going to spend a whole season of television to explain this character.
To explain stuff.
Like the Solo movie, which was like every single thing you need to know about this character has a reason for being there.
Remember this? Remember exactly. This? Little elbow nudge? Yeah.
Yeah, the remember this style of filmmaking and television making is, I think, destructive to a lot of what is enjoyable about a lot of that stuff. And I just think it betrays a lack of trust in the filmmakers, or really more the corporation that owns the characters, with the audience. You used to be able to treat the audience as intelligent people who were cognizant of what they were watching and taking in and making sort of assumptions and deductions on their own. Now it's like, no. These guys are idiots. We got to explain everything to them.
Spoon-fed everything.
Spoon feed it, and I think that's a problem. And I think in Moon Knight specifically, I was thinking to myself, this whole episode could be 3 minutes long, and you would still achieve the same effect.
I felt the same exact way. I'm like, you could just do like this last 5 minutes, and I got it. Like the last 5 minutes of that episode, the first episode, that could have been the beginning. That could have been the beginning of the show, and like it wouldn't require anything. That's such a good point. That's a really good point to bring up.
Yeah. And like, I know AJ, you watched the whole thing. Jacob, you only did the first episode. You don't mind if I like bring up a few potential spoiler type of things?
Please.
Because Mark's Jewishness is not as heavily influential in the series as some people would have liked. And I feel like something like that needs to be very nuanced. And most recently in the Cappuccio Jed McKay run, I thought they did a great job. He's talking to his therapist about how his father was like a very kind man, how he believed in his God, but that their God like let so much bad stuff happen to their people. And so he said, because of that, when I was dying out in the desert and Kanchu offered me a second chance, I turned my back on the God who I'd never seen before, who had never done anything for me and my people. And I said yes to Kanchu. And I'm curious, like, what, as someone who's well versed in the comics, like, what is your take? Like, what would you have liked to have seen in this series then?
Yeah, well, that's one of the notes I had written down too. I have to give Marvel a lot of credit. I mean, maybe credit isn't the right word, but one of the things I admire about Marvel, perhaps a little bit more than DC, is like they do have a pretty significant group of Jewish characters or Hebrew inflected characters, however you want to look at it. And I've always liked that, because to me, Marvel's the world outside your window. That's what they used to say, right? And like, there's just going to be naturally just going to be a lot of different people. And I think specifically with a character like Magneto, which is, I think, probably the premier example, that actually, his Judaism or, his ethnicity affects his character on a deep level. Like
I forgot about that.
Magneto can't really be separated from his Jewishness.
Yeah.
There's a weird thing now with the sliding time scale where like 1945 happened a long ass time ago. So Magneto, like they have to come up with a new reason every 10 years why he's still like sort of young, but there's no reason why he would be like jacked with, like silvery hair. Like he'd be an old man at this point. But anyway, I do love that about Marvel. And I'm not a guy who craves representation per se. Like that's not a barrier for me. But I do, when it's done well, I go, this is how
you appreciate it. You appreciate it. Yeah.
And I don't know if this is still the case, but for a while, Mark Spector's dad was, I believe, an Orthodox rabbi, which is just an interesting take. And Josh, what you were just talking about, I haven't read that series, but that's a cool idea. There's actually a really interesting sort of mythological tension between, the Egyptian pantheon and the Old Testament, right? There's stuff you can do there that plays with it. So yeah, if done well, that stuff is really appreciated. But again, I think some people may find this unfortunate. Some people may find it comical. Like a lot of stuff, especially from the 70s, like I think Iron Fist and Moon Knight are two great examples of this, are like, white guys getting the other another group of people mythology or culture and
the
make
last
it their
samurai,
own.
the last samurai treatment, with Tom Cruise.
I think, again, if done well, nothing wrong with it. However, you have to do it well, right?
You gotta do it well. Yeah.
A lot of times now, especially with Japanese cultures, that stuff is so overblown. You're like, oh, another cybernetic robot assassin samurai guy. You're like, I've seen this a million times. But
yeah.
So I do think if they dove into that, and who's to say? I don't know if they're going to make another like a season 2 or something.
Yeah.
It can't be done well. But you should, now, especially nowadays, proceed with caution. You don't want to ruffle the wrong feathers these days, or any feathers, I guess. But yeah, I love that about Marvel. You've got Moon Knight, Ben Grimm, Magneto, Kitty Pryde.
That's right. See, these are all things I'm forgetting. I forgot about
those
that.
Those are all Jewish characters, and I think many storylines have sort of dealt with it here or there. And it calls back to the creators, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, not the creators of all those characters, but those two Jewish guys doing a lot of the heavy lifting back in the day. Obviously, it's going to come out in something, and I think you go for it, but you got to do it well. And so who's to say what that means anymore, though? But that's one thing I always appreciated about Moon Knight. I thought like, oh, I got a guy in there,
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
And then there's the depiction of DID. I don't even. Do you know? Either of you know? Is DID in the DSM-5? I don't think it is. It's like such a touchy subject.
Yeah.
I actually completely unrelated to Moon Knight, but I was reading an article about this recently because I don't know if either of you are familiar with the emergence of DID on TikTok. I don't know if you've been paying attention.
I've seen some.
No.
Oh, there's some interesting stuff going on TikTok, which I try not to involve myself in too much. But
Good call.
A lot of people on TikTok are self-diagnosing or claiming that they are suffering from DID, and actually, to use their language, fronting their alters live or not live, or recording them on TikTok.
Wow.
Which, as I understand it, would actually be almost impossible to achieve because nobody who suffers from this disorder, which, by the way, I think, and Josh, you just said this, it's not really clear exactly how it works or if it works the way people claim it does, would be able to switch personalities on the fly and have these like sort of robust dialogues between alters. So there is a weird cultural moment that sort of happened in parallel with Moon Knight. But I do think it's like an overblown, misunderstood disorder that very, very, very few people suffer from, and it's completely debilitating. It's not the kind of thing where you go to work with DID. It doesn't happen. It's just not. That's not real.
That's one of the reasons why I brought up Split, because Split does that so well, where it's like this person cannot live their life because they don't know. Like they're literally, they come home, they're living a different life. They're trying to work. They keep getting fired and they can't remember. Like, it's just, like you said, debilitating. And like,
it's scary. Yeah.
It's scary. Yeah. It's very scary. Like, I think that's what they were trying to go for with this. I guess you could say this like mirror image of Mark and Steven. I think that's what they were like trying to achieve. Like, how scary is it? But in the pilot, I feel like something that was so confusing was, he sleeps with the wrists, the chains. So is he aware that he, like, you know what I mean? Like, is he aware? Like that's such a weird thing that it's like, he's shocked at seeing Mark, but at the same time sleeps with the chains because he thinks something's bad happening to him at night. And like, they kind of try to play it off as like, oh, it's a dream, that kind of thing. But then the tangible things happen in the dream. It just doesn't track. Like, it doesn't really, like, you're making it seem like he's teleporting to another dimension more than having an interpersonal conflict, an interpersonal challenge. You know what I mean? I feel like that's where they did it wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think logistically too, I had trouble understanding what was going on there because it reads to me, again, just from the pilot, that he believes he's sleepwalking and is not aware of an alternate persona.
But also
the leg restraint just comes off with Velcro. So I'm thinking, dude, if you know you're gonna do that, you gotta lock it up better than that.
You gotta lock it up, man.
Yeah. To commit to this, man.
Yeah, and all he has to do is take off some tape on the door and walk out. It's not going to stop you from doing anything.
And furthermore, to your point, like one of the other things I was laughing about, I'm like, okay, so how long has he been here? Like, how long has he been in London? Because some of this doesn't really make a ton of sense. Like, so he's sleepwalking and somehow he's able to keep his job while also like being in Austria for a month or something. Like, like some of these things don't really track. I'm just like, I don't really get it. I hate doing this, but at the same time, if someone did it better, you kind of got to take inspiration from the better thing. And like, we never see in Split, we never see, I can't remember the character's name, but we never see we never see the character looking at himself, basically. Right. We always see it from the perspective that everybody else sees it, where he's switching to this other person. And that's what makes it like scary. Like that's where you can see the horror, because there's the side of him that doesn't want to do the bad things he's doing. There's the side of him that wants to do the bad things. And all the ones in between are like, I mean, like, hell, there was one character in his personalities that is manipulating the bad version, if that makes any sense, the bad personality.
Right.
What a tremendously incredible, unique way of using something as complicated as DID. We don't have any of that here. It's just like, oh, he's got a different personality. You know, it's like, it's whatever, you know, it's like a little quirky. Yeah. You know, this one's quirky. This one's angry. Like, what is this? Like,
yeah. And I think the quirkiness plays against the drama of it, because you can't really, I mean, you could undercut tension with a little humor. I mean, that happens all the time, but this is like, it plays it as a joke almost from the jump. And again, I don't think of Moon Knight as a comedic character. Sometimes he's looked at by the other Marvel characters as kind of like the crazy guy, and that's funny. But there's nothing really funny about Moon Knight, and to me, that's sort of the disappointing thing, because there's so many other angles which you can come in for that character that are much more interesting and also propulsive from like an action adventure standpoint. Jumping into Moon Knight, like this guy, you know, dresses up in a ridiculous white Batman outfit and flies an airplane that's shaped like a crescent moon. You know, I guess there's something humorous about that, but it's also more fun to me. Like, I want to see that stuff. And I also, you know, not to take us too far off the path, but the supernatural quality of it is a little formulaic, a little rote to me now. Like, one thing I really just don't love about, you know, modern Marvel now is like there's no difference in the way like people put on their costumes anymore. They just summon them. Like Iron Man summons his costume. Yeah. This guy summons his costume and now he's wearing it. You know? One of the things I loved about the new Batman movie, amongst, you know, many things, was the fact that any scene where Bruce Wayne had to then put on his Batman suit,
go change.
Robert Pattinson was wearing some of the gear under like baggy sweatshirts and stuff.
That's a good point.
So we finally, after how many Batman movies do we finally get some version of that? To this, now it's just like, okay, whenever I need to become Moon Knight, I call my magic suit out of nowhere and I get magic superpowers.
Yeah,
it doesn't really do it for me. I like the gear. I like learning a little bit more about his operations and stuff like that. And so it just feels like more of the same to me. I really do think there's a missed opportunity to be like, this guy has been in the streets already, working as a vigilante, kind of showing off like his abilities, his combat, all that stuff. And again, you're sitting there. I'm like, where is Moon Knight? I'm waiting for it.
Yeah,
and then it's like, by the way, tune in next week. You know, I can't get down with that.
No, I hear you. I hear you, man.
Yeah. I guess one thing I did enjoy, and I think throughout the series, Jacob, do you plan on watching the rest of this? I don't know if we ever.
I think, you know, just now that I've breached that first wall, I might as well just go full bore.
It's like, okay. I gotta know where this goes.
I was just like, is he gonna watch more of it? One thing, if you continue, the depiction of Kanchu I thought was pretty good. Kanchu is not a good person or a good deity. He is not nice.
Yeah, that's the only part I liked. That's
so manipulative. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great part of the mythology in my mind, and you only get a little taste of him in that first episode. But I think Josh, you said it perfectly. Like, especially in the Moon Knight stories that I like, there's always the sense that Kanchu is using Mark, you know, for his own gains, and there's always some sort of ulterior motive. And even when it doesn't benefit Mark directly, Contra will use him for his own means. And I think that's an awesome character element to Moon Knight. Like, he's being puppeteered by this, could be a literal mythological character, could be his DID manifesting in interesting ways. And I think the ambiguity is also really important because, like, AJ, you were saying about like inhabiting the subjective experience of the character and seeing the change and looking in the mirror. It's almost a little bit more interesting to be like, you know, I don't fully understand the mechanics of how this works. He's multiple guys. There's also another guy speaking to him. It sounds like he's crazy, but we don't need to have that answer. We don't need, the audience doesn't need that fed to them. I think that it takes a little bit of the tension out of the story when it's like, okay, yeah, he's a god. He's using this guy as his avatar. He's going to juice him up with magic powers, and that's that. I like not knowing.
One thing you brought up that I thought would have been a much better direction would be if we never saw that horrific CGI, that bargain basement Walmart CGI Kanchu we saw in the episode. I think it would have been much cooler if Kanchu was also a voice. And like, if we never see like the changes, like the physical changes of Steven and Mark, us as the audience would be questioning, is Kanchu real? Like, I think that would have been a much cooler direction to take. And maybe, yes, in the last episode, because it's Disney, I get it. You got to sell the toys, whatever. So like, you could show Kanchu at the end, that kind of thing. But it would have been much cooler if that was a mystery. Like, is he really Steven? Is he really Mark? Is he really like these other characters? Like let us also try to figure that out, because that's more interesting than chasing after Ethan Hawke. That's much more interesting than just, and like Ethan Hawke's character is not even really like he's, man, we could talk about that forever.
He's got those Gucci slides though, man.
Those Gucci slides with glass on the bottom. He's taking those red bottoms to a different level with the glass that he's putting on his feet. But no, it's a lot of missed opportunities, I think. And I think it's unfortunate too, because this is a limited series, right? Or at least
Oscar Isaac signed only a contract for this one season. He's not obligated to come back for anything, not even movies. So I don't know. There's talks of there being a second season, but last I heard, he wasn't obligated to do it,
and he doesn't have to. They definitely leave the door open, and you'll see if you continue to watch, Jacob, you'll see that like how they're gonna try to have Moon Knight exist. How he can exist in the MCU without having to use Oscar Isaac. They definitely leave the door open to that. I just don't think it kind of felt like the whole story tried to fit that narrative in, if that made any sense. Like the whole story was structured so that could be a narrative, so that when they do introduce a different person as Moon Knight, you don't go, who's that? That kind of thing.
I think, my preference personally, I think it's a perfect opportunity to keep Moon Knight self-contained. Like, the times when Moon Knight has showed up as like a member of a team or showed up in other people's comics, it's not a great fit. Like, sometimes, like I said, they sometimes play it for humor. He shows up in Ed Brubaker's Secret Avengers run and then stays on with Warren Ellis. And there's something about that makes more sense. Like, because that team, I don't know if either of you are familiar with that run or that team. Like, they're like this like Black Ops Avengers that go like in the middle of the night. Nobody knows what they're up to. They're totally unsanctioned and they're doing crazy stuff. So you want to get a crazy guy for that. You want a Moon Knight on your team, because you're not gonna get Spider-Man to do it. And so that element makes sense. But to have him, like, I think it would be kind of silly to have another Avengers movie and then have like Moon Knight show up at the end to karate chop somebody. I don't think that.
I mean,
I don't think that works.
unless they're gonna do Age of Kanchu,
right? Yeah. I mean, again, there are ways to do it, and I don't want to shit on the ways when it works, but to me, I like the isolated component to it, but. To go back a step, I know we're running out of time, but I have to talk about it because it was mentioned. The not just with Moon Knight and not just with Marvel, but modern filmmaking and television. The CGI is atrocious nowadays.
Ooh, atrocious. Man, poo.
And I don't want to act like it's always been great, and now we're like in a dark age of CGI because I've always been a huge practical effects guy. That's I think that's
same.
And that's by the way, that's what makes this new Top Gun movie work. There's not a moment in the entire film except for maybe one tiny shot where I thought, that's fake.
CGI, yeah.
But it's like actual planes colliding with one another and exploding in really visceral, impactful ways. But with like Kanchu or with Moon Knight for that matter, because some of his suit is also it goes on.
Yeah, I mean it's like coming. It's like it looks
there's a textural quality to practical effects that is completely missed out upon when you do it CGI. And a guy like Kanchu, who's sort of like a Egyptian mummy guy thing, I would, why couldn't they get like a guy in stilts with real bone suits and like dust coming off of him, stalking around literally dark corridors, scaring the hell out of me. As soon as I see a CGI creation, I go, okay, there's nothing to fear here because it's not real. And Oscar Isaac is talking to a tennis ball off camera, and so I think another missed opportunity. What these guys have more money than God. Why can't they?
Why? Yes,
why
exactly.
Can't they spend it a little bit on practical effects. Why not?
I will throw in there that I think part of it is because of COVID and the filming cycle that they probably planned. Probably messed that up. However, it is not an excuse. Disney has so much money that they could just say, hey, can we just use a stand-in? Because, spoiler alert, Moon Knight wears a mask. Doesn't have to be Oscar Isaac. Doesn't have to be any guy. Could be any dude. Hey, it could be a woman. It really doesn't matter. Just a person in a mask can be there. And that's a weird thing. That's a very weird thing.
And and get somebody cool for like Doug Jones for Kanchu. That would have been really cool. Some really good physical performer.
Yeah, it would be
so aggravating.
It's always better. And I think a lot about there's so many arguments why they use it. Of course, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easier.
It's easy.
Sure.
It's easy. Yeah.
But certain things almost require practical effects. Like there's stuff you can't make Dune entirely practical. And I think like Denis Villeneuve and his team did a really bang up job of making that look real. It's really hard to pull off, and if you don't do it right, it really shows. But again, with something that's like we're talking about, like sort of a pulpy mummy vibe, they've been doing
they've been doing that since before CGI was even a thing. So
and so there's no excuse now.
There's no excuse.
You can do it.
Yeah.
And like I wanted to see like Mark like take off his mask, blood and sweat all over himself.
Yeah.
And like again, like the Batman did a good job. You had the eyeliner, he looked gross and grungy.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to see.
I agree completely.
I digress.
I think it's a really important point. And there's a great issue of the Ellis run. I keep going back to it because I really do think it's foundational.
Yeah.
Where which is essentially the Raid with Moon Knight. And
that would be awesome.
Yes.
That'd be so cool.
It's Mr. Knight starting at the bottom of a building and has to get his way to the top. That's the entire plot.
Is that the Freedom Tower?
I forget what's the building, but it's almost a little it's like the Raid or a kung fu movie where every level he progresses, there's like an even more insane martial artist waiting for him. Like some guy has like nunchucks, and Moon Knight is just like methodically making his way up the stairs, taking each and every one of these guys out. And the only way you can do that in a satisfying way, and I believe this show should have done that, is to shoot a martial arts episode, to shoot a sequence of martial arts, acrobatics, the whole thing. You can't do it with CGI. You have to go Jackie Chan.
It has to be a person. Yeah.
It has to be a Jackie Chan movie.
The last thought here before we wrap up, I think in the future, because where my concerns come in is that I know Disney wants to bring in the Marvel, the Netflix Marvel series. They want to do like Deadpool, that kind of, I know Deadpool's different, but in the theme of like more adult type of comics, right? I think what Disney needs to understand or just come to terms with is that a lot of people consume these IPs. So it's okay if not all the IPs are for kids. That's okay. Those kids will grow up and be adults, and then they will appreciate the adult thing for adults. And Disney has this whole thing: we will not have mature content on Disney Plus. Okay, cool. You have Hulu.
Right.
Show Moon Knight on Hulu. Then that's okay. Again, everything doesn't have to serve the MCU. You know what I mean? The MCU is not a real thing. You guys made it up. You're literally making up as you. It's okay. Let it go. Let it go. Just let Moon Knight. Okay. Now that I'm mad at you, Jacob. You just told me the greatest idea I've ever heard. They could have just gone to the director of the raid and they said, "Hey, Moon Knight," and he would have been like, "Yeah," and that's it. And nobody would blink twice. They could have just done shot for shot the raid with Moon Knight. No one would have blinked twice, and it would have made so much more sense. And it's one of those things where I want Disney to understand, and I hope that by the, I guess, backlash, quote unquote, that they're getting with Star Wars and Marvel stuff, I hope that they come to terms with we need to start diversifying our IPs. We need to diversify how we make them. I don't think Moon Knight needs a Lex Luthor. He doesn't need this opposite to him. Right. You know what I mean? His greatest enemy. Hey, again, Disney, Marvel. I'm here for hire. His greatest enemy is himself.
Right.
Okay. Boom. I just wrote a show for you. You know what I mean? That could be something that's a central theme. They try to do that in this show, but they do it in the worst possible way. And it gets to the point where it's like, okay, what are we even doing here? These might as well just be two different people. Crazy.
Yeah, no,
crazy,
I share your frustration, and perhaps this will be the last thing I say on the matter for today. But I agree, and that's my hope always. I don't let it overwhelm me because I just know to be disappointed these days. But I do think there's two things. There's one, when I was a kid, the culture is different now. But I grew up watching RoboCop and Terminator and Starship Troopers and Aliens when I was 10, and my parents didn't even think twice about that, and society didn't either, because they even made RoboCop toys for children.
That's a good point. That's true.
That's an R-rated film, and there was never any discussion in my house or any of the kids I grew up with was like, is Jacob going to be all right after watching this? No, I was a well-adjusted child, and I watched the movie and I knew that was fiction, and I enjoyed it on those terms. And I think so. The way adult entertainment has kind of been pushed to the fringe is sort of a bizarre element of our modern culture. But I will end on a positive note. And what I'll say is my hope, which I think is a realistic one, is that maybe there is a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old or whomever who watches Moon Knight and maybe enjoys it or is intrigued by it. And then they do go to the comic store or Comixology or wherever. And then they do find the Sienkiewicz stuff or the Ellis stuff or the Lemire stuff or the stuff that's going on right now. And then they learn this incredible sort of what we might call C-list mythology in Marvel. He's not Spider-Man, but they might really get into it. And I think that would be a great thing, because then people will really know what Moon Knight's about. And we all win when that happens. And so that's my hope with this stuff, that they get excited about Moon Knight and then they read the stuff that I like, and then I can talk to them about that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good attitude to have about it. I obviously, we had a lot of constructive criticism regarding the series. I mean, I don't want to ever dump on creatives. I know a lot of time and effort, blood, sweat, and tears goes into this.
Absolutely.
Doesn't excuse you from putting out something. Doesn't put out some art. Yeah. But again, let's end with some hope that people can still discover a really cool character, and that things might change going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you, Jacob, for joining us. We would love to bring you back for other shows.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you guys are listening, we are giving away a copy of Jakob's comic series. So if you guys are following us on our socials, please, we have 2 more days left in the giveaway. Someone's getting a cool comic. I bought one for myself. It should be here, I think, Thursday. So
hell yeah,
we will see. But yeah, guys, follow us on our social medias, subscribe. You know the deal. You've been hearing this for 10 years since YouTube was a thing. I don't need to go over it. Thank you for listening to our show.
The Bandwagon Fan Podcast is hosted by Josh Jimenez, Alex Margosa, and me, AJ Soy. Our show is produced by Kate Smith and edited by your boy, AJ. Our social media is managed by Natalia Kokulia, and our theme song, Lush Waves, is provided to us by Taylor Lewin of _audio. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.